Anchors up, sails at full. Welcome to the Sloopcast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing right, Jared. Doing all right. How are you doing today, Jared?
You said my name several times there. I'm doing good. I am doing good. We got the spring behind us. We got portal season, V2 spring portal season underway.
For a few more days.
For a few more days. Well, I mean, for a few more days for them to enter, you guys will sign when they sign, if they sign. Mm-hmm. Unfortunate reality of the situation. But today I thought we would take a look at the. Wait a minute. First off, new tradition, good tradition. There we go. I thought we'd take a look at the new depth chart. We did a depth chart back in January, and that was, of course, I think for the most part, the transfer portal had figured itself out. Of course, now we're in a new transfer portal window, but we now have a situation where players are, we're through a spring already. Some of the freshmen are working their way in. We see how the portal players that did come in are establishing themselves. We'll see what freshmen are establishing themselves. And anything else you want in the introduction before we just move on to the depth chart?
No, I think that's good. Before we start, just one comment about Ohio State did get a flip from a TCU commit wide receiver, Brock Boyd, from Southlake, Texas, 3/4 star, depending on where you're looking at, wide receiver. Obviously, if this is a wide receiver that Brian Hartline really likes and wants him to don the scarlet and gray.
He's very underrated by some of the services right now. I'll say that. So don't get too, if you see his recruiting stars or recruiting rankings,
last year,
oh, that's not a lot. Don't worry about it. He's better.
His junior year, 111 catches in high school. That alone is crazy. 111 catches in high school.
And
over
that's
1,800 yards and 19 touchdowns as a wide receiver.
And that's big boy Texas.
That's big boy
high school.
Texas.
Like that's not a small division. That's not a weaker conference. Like it's the same high school as oh God, you can tell I've been off my stimulants lately because I can't pull names. The quarterback who was here for a minute then went to Texas. Ewers. I got there eventually. I believe he's the same high school as Ewers. Obviously they don't intersect.
Yes.
But right. Big boy big boy high school football. So he's not putting up those names in, small division high school ball. There's been there's been a lot of interesting. We just did a recruiting mock 2 weeks ago. And I could release a brand new one right now if I wanted to. There's been so many changes. And in fact, I have released a new one, just not in podcast form. Discord.thesloopcast.com. You can see the absolute. I just updated it on Sunday, Sunday 420. Funny number. Sunday 420. You can come see the latest mock, discord.thesloopcast.com right now. Don't even need the paid membership version of the Discord. That's in the free version of the Discord, discord.thesloopcast.com, to see the absolute latest. I'll say I just moved a defensive lineman into the mock a couple hours ago. All right. But that's a whole other show. Let's focus in on the depth chart. Let's do that now. You good? You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Offensive mock currently on the screen, and of course we'll talk our way through it. We got Big E starting at left tackle. no surprise there.
No surprise. He had his black stripe removed a few weeks ago. I think we mentioned our last episode that we released. Yeah, no surprise. No surprise there.
Absolutely no surprise there. They brought him in to do that. And then I have right behind him, young man Ian Moore, in his second, is that correct? Second year at Ohio State. He will be taking up the backup spot, and I think will be the starter at the left tackle spot for Ohio State next year. Yeah, his second year. I think he's the starting left tackle 2026. But we're talking 2025 right now. We got Big E holding down the left tackle spot.
Mm-hmm. And don't be surprised if I know you have him at left guard. But don't be surprised if Carter Lowe would maybe be a backup for the left tackle too.
I mean, Carter Lowe is seen as a bit of a tweener. Yeah. I think he's a guy that if he develops into a tackle, he'll be a great tackle. If he doesn't, he'll be a great guard. And the reason I have him at the backup left guard right now is not because I believe he is long-term a tackle. I just don't know about that. The staff will have to figure that out for whatever that's worth. But as a true freshman, he's a guard.
Sure.
As a true freshman, he's a guard. They're not gonna. Ohio State actually has some depth at tackle right now, especially if we look at the right tackle. And Austin Saraveld's been, they bump Austin Saraveld out to right tackle, where he moves from guard to tackle. So, between Big E, Phillip Daniels, Austin Saraveld, Ian Moore, Ohio State actually has some depth at tackle right now. So, as a true freshman, Carter Lowe projects as a guard. I don't think that's a controversial opinion. I have him backing up Luke Montgomery at left guard. So, but for those of you keeping track at home on the starters, left tackle, Big E, left guard, Luke Montgomery.
Yeah, Montgomery at left guard would be no surprise to me. I mean, he did start in the national championship game there.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me that he'd be there, though. But a little twist here, though, because I think the right tackle is still. I still think it's up in the air. I think it's still.
It is.
It's a big battle with Austin and Phillip Daniels.
I agree.
Let's just say Phillip Daniels. Say Phillip Daniels wins that right tackle. Don't be surprised if you see Saraveld move over to right guard then.
Or left guard, or
left
who knows.
Guard.
I think he's a very versatile player, and I think that's just kind of that's huge. If you're Ohio State, you have someone like Austin Saraveld who is versatile. You have someone like Carter Lowe who's versatile. You still have the Armstrong twins at your disposal who are versatile. And I think having that sort of versatility is enormous, because the roster has been shrunk from 120. Was it 125 of walk-ons, or was it 115? I forget. Down to 105. And of course, you can now have all of those players on scholarships, which can help with the quality of said depth. But regardless of any of that, having versatility among your scholarship offensive linemen, because you can't just jump up to 105 right away. We're in a weird sort of transitional period. Having that sort of versatility is huge. And like, if worse comes to worse when it comes to guards, I have Carson Hinsman. That's an amazing transition. Thank you very much, everybody. I have Carson Hinsman at the starting center position, who is an experienced guard at Ohio State. And if they need to move Joshua Padilla into the starting center spot, I think there's all the confidence in the world he can do that.
That's what they did last year. I mean, and why couldn't they, if the worst were to happen, knock on wood, throw salt over your shoulder, or whatever you want to do. Like, if there's injuries that come up, you can move Hinsman around like a lot of the other players that we talked about as well. But but Hinsman was the center throughout the playoff run. But what a good problem for Ohio State this year. What complete opposite, like looking at what we said this time last year, like, oh man, the offensive line, like if we can figure out the offensive line, this is going to be a really good team here. But so many question marks on the offensive line this year. They got depth. They got depth here, and what a great thing to have Padilla as a backup center there too.
So yeah, because again, I think you could so moving to right guard, I have Tegra as the starting right guard. That will shock absolutely nobody.
Nope.
But you have Tegra Chabola sitting there at right guard. I have Deontay Armstrong as the backup right guard. However, maybe realistically, if something happens to Tegra, maybe Carson Hinsman moves out to right guard and Padilla is your starting center. Or potentially Saraveld moves in from right tackle to right guard and Philip Daniels takes over at right tackle. They have options, which is just something that, it feels like a huge improvement. And of course, adding Big E and adding Philip Daniels and having Ian Moore come into his second year and having a top flight recruit like Carter Lowe at your disposal, adding those types of players to your team obviously are a huge help
Yeah. Well, don't be surprised. Like Ian Moore all spring has been kind of tackle guard, kind of playing both sides there. Don't be surprised if they may move Ian Moore as a backup somewhere too.
Absolutely. They are shooting for versatility along the offensive line right now. And for what it's worth, they are currently shopping around in the transfer portal for offensive linemen as well. If they're trying to build a true two deep, if they're trying to say, we have 10 starters.
I really like Ohio State's offensive line this year.
I do too.
I know they lost some good players.
Absolutely.
Last year, I mean, they lost how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 offensive linemen last year.
Well,
and if you come and tell me
some of those guys,
Ohio State lost 7 offensive line. Yes, Ohio State lost 7 offensive linemen, and you just say that statement to me. I'm like, oh, that's a lot of talent. But yes, there was a lot of talent that Ohio State lost, but
a lot of those guys were guys who weren't going to play here. If we're being honest about those 7 players, but they lose 2 guys who are going to be drafted.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
I
agree with most of those. Most of that offensive line there. A lot of versatility between the line. Some could be tackle to guard, vice versa. But I feel really confident with this group here than I did this time last year.
Yeah, and I'll just say, Saraveld, Daniels, Saraveld, that's still very much a battle. That's that's the one spot I would say on this graph, on this chart. As long as who's the backup right guard, I think is also pretty much up in the air as well. But as far as the starters, right tackle is still very much a battle.
Sure. All right. Well, let's kind of stick with the kind of offensive line. Let's do the tight end. Jared,
sure.
Is this year the year of the tight end?
I mean, that's yet to be seen. I don't know. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult to do.
Well, Ohio State, I agree with you as the starter here. Got transfer Max Clare from Purdue, who is an excellent addition to Ohio State last year. He had 51 catches, almost 700 yards, 4 touchdowns against a pretty bad Purdue team last year. and he was able to put up this kind of numbers there.
Yeah. With a pretty bad Purdue team. And I also say I don't go 3 deep too often. In the depth chart, I tried to keep it mostly to 2 deep. So if you see me going 3 deep, it's for a reason.
Yeah.
I do have Merrick.
Dave Biddle calls this tight end room the deepest tight end room that he's seen at Ohio State.
I think that's fair. I think that's an incredibly fair statement. Now, it's worth noting that 2 of the guys are transfers. So take that. Yeah. Take that how you will. But Bennett Christian is not. And, there's some question about who's the third tight end. But I think if we're even having that conversation, and even then it's very situational. Thurman is more of a pass catcher. Bennett Christian's more of a run blocker. So, it might just depend upon what formation you're in, or, who's available and who's not available, all that. But I do have Bennett Christian as the third tight end at the moment. But
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree with that.
But I would say I'd say it's a battle, but it's also just very situational between him and Thurman.
Sure. All right, let's do the wide receivers here, because I feel confident that the starters, what you have here, Jared, is what the starters are.
The starters are pretty locked in. I don't think there's a lot of debate there.
Yeah. So, Jeremiah Smith, Brandon Inniss, Carnell Tate as your starters.
Inniss in the slot.
Inniss in the slot there. Yeah. This is a just replacing, just constantly replacing here is what Heartline is doing. Like you lose Emeka.
Yeah.
Big player, big playmaker, went to the NFL, going to be highly picked. But you throw in Inniss, which we've seen at times some greatness in the limited snaps that he was in, and we all have seen it in Tate as well too. And we've heard great things from Bryson Rogers last year too, and Quincy Porter this year. We've heard a lot of things in spring camp of how well he's been doing too.
Yeah, Quincy Porter. I was contrasting the mock we did back in January to this one, and one of the only change I'll say, although I think I moved Mylan Graham from behind Jeremiah Smith over to the slot, which is probably a better spot for him. And I moved Quincy Porter in behind Jeremiah Smith. So, what changed during camp, that changed. Quincy Porter is already establishing himself as a dude, as the next guy at Ohio State. And that's saying a lot, because this room's stupid deep still. This room is absolutely incredibly deep. We all know how Ohio State recruits at wide receiver.
Yeah.
We all know who Jeremiah Smith is. We all know who Brennan Inniss is. We all know who Carnell Tate is. The
great thing I like about all of these receivers, those 3 there in particular, Jeremiah Smith, Brandon Inniss, Carnell Tate, you can move him around. I mean, Tate's probably more of a your deep threat more than Smith and Inniss, but I think you can really rotate them around. You could put Jeremiah Smith into the slot and have Tate outside, and you can move Inniss around too,
sure,
as well. Like, I think this is a very, very versatile group where you can really move different wide receivers into the slot.
I mean, I'll just most teams in the Big Ten, not all. Most teams in the Big Ten would trade their 3 starting wide receivers for Quincy Porter, Mylan Graham, and Bryson Rogers.
Yeah.
Maybe everyone but Oregon. I mean, realistically, in the Big Ten, who wouldn't take that trade? I don't think Oregon would.
Michigan won't.
No, Michigan absolutely would.
Michigan won't, because they're Michigan.
Well, okay, yeah, but if we're just talking talent,
yeah,
who in the Big Ten wouldn't take that trade?
I'm thinking here. I know that I don't want to have a lot of dead air here, but this is just me thinking, and I can't really think of it.
Oregon wouldn't. That's the end of the list.
Oregon
I
may
think.
not. Yeah, sure.
I think that's the end of the list. I mean, because you also have to think Porter, Graham, Rogers. There's not a lot of experience there, and that matters, right? If you're talking about starters.
Yeah, let's do the last two positions, and then we'll take our first ad break here. So, running back. Let's do the running back here. Love the talent here. Obviously, a lot of inexperience. You lost 2 1,000 rushers. It's just still crazy just to think about. Both running backs rushed for 1,000 yards.
Yep.
James Peoples, C.J. Donaldson, Bo Jackson.
Yeah. And I think Sam William Dixon will get
a lot of talent, just not a lot of experience yet.
And I think Sam William Dixon will get play as well. I don't know if he's like a running back. He might be a third down running back. He might be kind of a versatile Curtis Samuel-esque guy at times. So maybe he starts at running back, but then goes out into the slot. So so all of a sudden you have 4 wide receivers. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if there's a spot on the depth chart that really describes what Sam William Dixon does. So he's not. So if you look at the list, Sam William Dixon's not on the graphic on screen. That does not mean he's not going to play. I just don't know if he is. I don't know if I can just put him into the category of. I know he's in the running back room, but if we're talking about hey, who's carrying the load at running back if, say, James Peoples gets hurt? Well, it'll be Donaldson and Bo Jackson right behind him, I think. But again, that doesn't mean Sam William Dixon doesn't get on the field.
Yeah, I really think James Peoples is your number 1 running back.
Absolutely.
Again, me reading between the tea leaves here. He only had 2 carries.
I love your mixed analogies.
Yes, I love it too. He only had 2 carries during the spring game.
I don't care.
The coaches know that he's their main man and not going to try to get him hurt in a meaningless game here. So,
Austin says, unfortunately, WrestleMania is on and we got some bangers tonight. All right. We'll see you, Austin.
All right, quarterback. We got ourselves a quarterback battle, or so it says here, Jared.
Yeah. I still feel confident it's Julian Sayin.
Me too. We got to create some internal Sayin gifts here, Jared. There's a lot of potential there.
I'm just saying. It's too easy.
Yes, it is.
That's too easy. Everyone will do that. I'm not doing, just saying, not doing that. We have to be more clever than that. Super Saiyan almost feels a little too easy, but it's still kind of good. It's still kind of good. But yeah, no, I think Lincoln Kienholz has outperformed my expectations of him this spring. I will say that. I think he's made a lot of excellent progress. I think Sayin just has a little more God-given ability. I think Kienholz throws a superior deep ball. I think if Ohio State had to throw Kienholz in, it would look a hell of a lot better than it did against Missouri when he was a true freshman. If you had to throw Kienholz in, Ohio State will be fine. But Ryan Day likes to run his super consistent, on time, on rhythm offense. And to me, when I see a guy who's going to be constantly on time and constantly on rhythm and just build momentum through consistency, through accuracy, that to me is Sayin.
Yep.
Julian Sayin to me is that guy. He feels like a Ryan Day guy. That I don't know how to say it more intelligently than that. But when I see Sayin, that's what I see.
Yeah.
I see a Ryan Day guy.
All right. So that is the offense. As offense, we'll go ahead and tackle the defense here, but we'll take our first ad break. TheSloopcast.com is your go-to link for everything and anything Sloopcast related. There you can find our YouTube page or Discord, discord.thesloopcast.com. Our Patreon, if you want to help support Jared and I, our merch store, and but a bunch of other ones there, such as like our Sloopcast gifts. I don't think we've really talked about that.
No, we
Jared
don't. Gift.thesloopcast.com.
Yeah, Jared does some great gifts there that you can look at. You can post or whatever. Some great stuff there. All of that over at thesloopcast.com. So we'll go ahead and take our first break and be right back.
All right, Kyle. Ready to talk about the defense?
Defense, yes. Defensive line. Let's talk about the defensive line. Let's do the ends. Let's go ahead and do the ends here. I feel confident with what you have here as well. Yeah. Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson as your two defensive ends there.
Yes.
CJ Hicks moving from linebacker to defensive end. I think he's going to get a lot of snaps there, falling behind Kenyatta Jackson. I definitely agree with that.
But the other one here, Hicks, you might see Hicks, whether it be in like more of a rushman formation. I'm not necessarily saying like in replacement of Kenyatta Jackson, but I think you'll see CJ Hicks come in on third downs a lot more and won't simply be Jackson's backup. I think CJ Hicks is going to see a lot more time than simply being Kenyatta Jackson's backup. I'll say that.
Probably the next defensive end in.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And again, especially on third down, especially on passing situations, you'll see CJ Hicks.
Okay. Logan George, I think he's had a very quiet spring camp here, coming from the portal from Idaho State.
Quiet but productive.
Yes, but like Coach Johnson came out and said he's going to play. Coach Johnson came out in the spring and said he's going to play a lot too.
Absolutely. He's not going to be your pass rush specialist. The way he's like the opposite of CJ Hicks. He's not going to be your guy who's going to come in and be your pass rush specialist by any means. But he's just an incredibly solid defensive end player, especially in the run game. And it's not to say he can't pressure the quarterback, because he can. To be clear, I'm not trying to be like, he's not really a pass rusher. He absolutely can be. But, if we're talking in relationship to Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, CJ Hicks, not the pass rusher that those three guys are.
Sure.
Now, Kyle, is Ohio State done here, do you think, at defensive end?
Oh no. What else do you have for the defensive ends?
Well, we do have confirmation that Ohio State is talking to Bo Atkinson of North Carolina. He's kind of a guy that you kind of got to go get if he wants to come here. He's that type of player. It's sort of like last year, Ohio State didn't really need Caleb Downs yet. If you, and that might be too lofty of a, I really like Bo Atkinson. I think Ohio State would be better with Bo Atkinson. I'm not saying he's Caleb Downs by any means, but
yeah, well, he is coming to Ohio State tomorrow, or the day that this is coming out, Monday the 21st. He is coming to Ohio State to take a visit and see what happens.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have a good read yet on the likelihood. I would say that if it comes down to, it kind of depends upon what Ohio State has left in the budget. Because, and as we sort of shift to talking about the defensive tackles, I think there's more of a need at defensive tackle is, getting someone who is like a rotational starter at defensive tackle.
I think so too.
I think there's more of a need there. I would say if there is a hole in the Ohio State depth chart, it would probably be defensive tackle depth. If you're trying to rotate in 4 or 5 defensive tackles, I don't know that they have 4 or 5 defensive tackles. And then of course injuries come into play, right? Someone just thised the unfortunately watching WrestleMania. Kyle, we don't have any live chatters because we ain't wrestling. Kyle, should we take our shirts off and start like punching each other?
No.
Okay, do you want to keep our shirts on and start punching each other?
No, we'll just keep talking about players.
Okay. All right.
Another name here that Mark over at Buckeye Huddle says to keep an eye out for is an Army transfer, Elo Matazi.
Okay.
He's in the transfer portal. Ohio State has shown interest in him. He is slated to take a visit to Georgia as well. He's kind of a outside linebacker / edge.
Yeah.
Not sure how well he's going to play scheme wise for Ohio State per what Mark has said here. But I mean, if Atkinson visit goes well and goes to Ohio State, do they still need that help, or is this kind of
probably
a backup in case Atkinson doesn't
more
go
likely
to Ohio State too?
I'd say that's more likely. Yeah. I would say he's, if they get outbid on Atkinson, but they still feel like they need some defensive end depth, would be my read there. But as I said, defensive tackle may be more of a concern. I feel great about Caden McDonald starting at nose tackle. I feel great about Edric Houston as the backup 3 tech defensive tackle. I really like the progress Jason Moore is making. I think he's absolutely a rotational player at Ohio State this year and has a, brighter future as a starter at Ohio State. They have Tywin Malone, who transferred to Ohio State 3 years ago now, from Ole Miss. I forget how long he's been at Ohio State now, but transferred a while ago. Definitely a sort of a, we talk about, because we still got some guys hanging around who had extra eligibility from 2020. I believe he's one of them. Let me double check that. So, you talk about having someone in there who's like I always like to use the phrase a grown ass man. Well, Tywin Malone's that guy. That being said, no, Tywin Malone was a true freshman in 2021. He's just simply on his regular 5th year. So no, but he is a 5th year nose tackle. And I believe this is his 3rd year at Ohio State. Although I could be mistaken.
Yeah.
But
Eric Mensah is another name to keep it out for the backups rotation here. Redshirt freshman has gotten some buzz over the spring, and Will Smith Jr.
Sure. Absolutely.
But yeah, I agree. I think Ohio State does need to go and look in the portal. See if they
I would
can
say
get
Will Smith especially is more of a 3 tech guy. I believe they're looking at Mensah as a 3 tech guy. I think where they really need some help is probably more in the nose tackle area, but also just any sort of depth or assistance they can get as a defensive tackle, I think would be huge. So who are they looking at in the portal, Kyle?
Sure. So a couple of names here. You do have a Syracuse transfer of Murad Watson, probably one of the biggest names out there right now. He was a freshman All-American. It still has 3 years eligibility to go along with the transfer there. A lot of teams are looking at him as well. You have here, Jared, Troy Pikes, transfer from South Alabama. Tell a little bit about him.
I'll be honest, I don't know, but I do know that he played for South Alabama. If you're looking for like an in-depth run on him, I don't have it, but I do. There's confirmed. I believe he is visiting Ohio State. He has a confirmed visit to Ohio State. So those are two of the guys you're looking at right now at defensive tackle. Watson from Syracuse and Pikes from South Alabama. Also, just real quick to just mentally jump back to the offensive line real quick. Ohio State is bringing in Orrin Irving from Sam Houston State and Justin Terry from West Virginia. Justin Terry being an Ohio kid originally, and both of those guys have some eligibility remaining. So those are definitely like long-term plays. Those are definitely probably not guys who you're going to see. Well, I think it depends. It may. I don't know either of those guys crack the starting lineup this year, but definitely have futures at Ohio State and potentially, because injuries are a thing, could get into the starting lineup one way or the other this year should they join Ohio State. Probably more so Irving as an immediate impact, with Terry being more of a long-term impact guy.
Okay. Two other names that Mark over at Buckeye Huddle has put in here too. He would be a sophomore this year. David Stone Jr. from Oklahoma. He played
at what position, Kyle?
Defensive tackle.
Yep. A
defensive tackle here.
So I jumped back to offensive line, so I just made sure everyone was on the same page.
No worries. He's had some relationship with Ohio State in the past, when he was in high school too. Maybe a name to keep an out for. But if you're looking for, like you said, a nose tackle, someone to eat space here, look no further than at Vanderbilt transfer Demarion Thomas, 6'2", 320-pound, as Mark says here, space eater.
Yeah, that would be
at Vanderbilt, and has 2 years of eligibility.
That would be an amazing addition. He would be an amazing. That's the exact type of guy that Ohio State needs, in my opinion. And it's worth noting, I think this came up for a different defensive tackle. SEC still has immediate eligibility rules about transferring in conference, which the Big Ten got rid of like 10 years ago.
They did, yeah.
But the SEC still has immediate eligibility. I think waivers and whatnot that they would have to surpass if you transfer in conference. So he might specifically be looking to leave the SEC. It's a lot easier for him to leave the SEC.
I mean, keep that up. The SEC can keep that on, whatever. I mean, yeah, let other teams bid on and all that. But yeah, Mark did say in here, as a interior lineman here, he checks all the boxes for Ohio State: experience, production, and multiple years of eligibility. Checks all those boxes. So another name to keep it out for. All right, let's move to the linebackers.
All right.
How do we feel about this year's linebackers, Jared?
Well, I think we're sticking with two linebackers. I think we had, when we did this back in January, there was some conversation about, 3-3 versus 4-2 versus, and I feel pretty confident that we're sticking 4-2 now, with defensive coordinator changes and whatnot. It looks like we're sticking 4-2. So I didn't feel the need to break out these alternative version of the depth chart this week. I think first off, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese. Those are your starters. There's no There's no question there in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, the big question here is what Ohio State's new coach is going to do with this defense. Know that Knowles loved the 2 linebacker set. Are we going to see more of a three backer set here? I don't really know. We really don't know.
We really don't. And I would also say one of the reasons why you stuck with 5 defensive backs as often as you did last year was because, like, what are you going to do? Take Jordan Hancock off the field? And not only that, but you had Ransom, who was such a great up safety that he was kind of almost playing linebacker at times. Ransom and Downs are so good in run support that you could get away with running 2 linebackers. You didn't want to take, like I said, last year's scheme and last year's personnel really fit the 2 linebacker system. Right now, I'm anticipating they stay 2 linebacker. Could Peyton Pierce see more playing time this year instead of Lorenzo Styles or whoever ends up winning the nickelback position? We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But for right now, I'm sticking with the 4-2-5 as far as our depth chart is concerned.
Sure. Yeah. Styles and Reese. Yeah. I think those are the obvious 2 candidates. And
if
Peyton
it's a
Pierce,
third, it's Peyton Pierce.
It's Peyton Pierce. Yeah. That's a name that I've heard a lot. A lot of youth, a lot of underclassmen in the linebacker group here.
Yeah. And I have Riley Pettijohn sort of as right with transfer Ty Howard as, the backups to Arvell Reese, although I think Peyton Pierce probably likely your backup regardless. And I think the 4th linebacker, if your first 2 linebackers are Styles and Reese, and if your 3rd linebacker is Pierce, I think there's still a lot of room for competition for who's going to get that 4th linebacker spot.
It's open.
Yeah, it's very much open. I put Ty
Wow.
Howard there because he's experienced. So if we're talking like week 1 depth chart, you lean Ty Howard. If we're talking about week 12 depth chart, it might be more Pettijohn or one of the other young linebackers on
or Garrett Stover.
Or Garrett Stover. I wouldn't rule out Garrett Stover. I would say I do give, as far as the young guys are concerned, I'm leaning more Pettijohn right now, but that's not set in stone by any means. That's not a hill I'm going to die on.
Fair enough.
That's just sort of what I heard coming through spring. Like, who of the young linebackers was sort of making the most noise, was, demanding the most attention. And the name I heard more often than not was Pettijohn.
Mm-hmm. We'll just knock it out.
And I'll just say this too. I wouldn't rule out. I mean, I'm not ruling out Lee. I'm not ruling out, as you said, Stover. I'm not ruling out TJ Alford. I'm not ruling out anyone. I think again, that 4th linebacker spot does feel super wide open to me right now.
Mm. All right, let's just knock out the nickelback here. I think this is obvious. It's Lorenzo Styles and Bryce West as your starter and backup. I feel very confident there.
I for week 1, yes. I do wonder as the season goes on what that split looks like. Bryce West is incredibly talented, inexperienced, young. He's a redshirt freshman. I believe he redshirted, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Bryce West, as the season goes, if it starts off with Styles getting 80% of the snaps, that could move a lot closer to 50-50, if not West maybe taking it over, getting more snaps by the end of the year. And that's not me knocking Styles by any means. That's just that Bryce West is that good.
Yeah. All right. Defensive backs. Igbinosun, Jermaine Matthews.
Lock it in.
Lock that in.
Yeah.
But those backups though, like those backups are incredible. You talk about you mentioned about the offensive side with the wide receivers, like your backups to your 3 starting wide receivers. The backups for these cornerbacks here, a lot of the Big Ten teams would love to have Aaron Scott and or Devin Sanchez on their roster.
Yeah. I mean, again, you want to play the wide receiver game like we played. Like, how many teams in the Big Ten would take Aaron Scott, Bryce West, and Devin Sanchez as their 3 cornerbacks? Mm-hmm. As their 3 starting quarterbacks? Who would trade their 3 starting cornerbacks for those 3 in the Big Ten? Most. I mean, you do have like a inexperience thing working against you there. You want to start 3 freshmen, 2 of them redshirt, but 3 freshmen. Actually, did Scott redshirt? I'm not sure. But regardless,
Scott did not.
Scott did not redshirt. So you'd obviously have like an inexperience issue happening there, but those are 3. Those aren't 3 backups. Those are 3 future starters. Straight up. Those are 3 future starters.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's short and sweet. I don't think we need to go much more about that with the corners here. Safeties. To me, I think this is pretty.
As far as your starters, are concerned, no, that's
Caleb Downs. Caleb
Obviously.
Downs, obvious.
Malik Hartford's locked in as a starter too, in my opinion. Now, Kyle's going to fight me on this. Listen, Kyle, Malik Hartford was going to start last year before Caleb Downs became available, and I was fine with that. And that was last year. Now, obviously, if Caleb Downs is out there and Caleb Downs wants to come to Ohio State, obviously you bring in Caleb Downs. But in an alternative universe where he never hits the portal, Malik Hartford's your starting safety last year, you're fine. Now, I'm not saying he's as good as Caleb Downs, because let's not be silly.
Yeah.
But Malik Hartford, in an alternative universe where Malik Hartford is your starting safety for Ohio State last year, I would have gone into that season feeling great about having Hartford as your starting safety.
According to multiple people who I've looked at here, Jared, their prediction for the other safety position is actually Jalen McClain over Hartford.
I disagree.
And one of them says that this is the competition, the main battleground for the starting position on the defensive side here is Hartford and McClain.
I remember when I said before I wasn't going to die on that hill. I'll die on this hill. Sure. Malik Hartford's your starting safety.
Mm-hmm. Leroy Rocker, another solid, I think, but another name to put out there. Fahim Delane is another safety as well.
Leroy Roker is who I have. I believe it's Roker. Leroy Roker's who I have behind Caleb Downs right now. But that is not a hill I will die on. I think there's a lot of guys. I picked Roker. I like Roker. But I think there's a lot of guys who could be in that spot. And one of the interesting things I think worth keeping an eye on this year, by the way, like even Inky Jones, who is a former walk-on player from Steubenville, been with the program for a while. Not a guy who I would count out winning that backup safety spot. Beyond that, you mostly have true freshmen. You do have Keenan Nelson Jr., who's obviously not a freshman, but Fahim Delane, who did not join for the spring, so he's not in the conversation yet, but is incredibly talented. Cody Haddad, I don't see as an immediate impact guy as far as the starting lineup's concerned. But Deshaun Stewart is an excellent player. But to me, I think it's mostly between Nelson and Roker.
Mm-hmm.
But again, Fahim Delane not on the team yet, which obviously holds him back from being in this conversation. But is an incredibly talented player, and we'll see what happens when he shows up in August.
Sure.
I don't know, Kyle. What do you think? How do you feel, Leroy Roker?
I don't know. I could see it either way. I could see it either way. I think it's too early to tell at this point. It wouldn't surprise me either way.
That's fair.
As the backup.
I didn't create anything for the punter or the kicker. I don't think there's any surprises there.
Yeah.
All right.
We're going to take our second. We'll take our second ad break real quick here, and we'll wrap things up here again. Excuse me. Again, thesloopcast.com. You find all of the links. You can also find our YouTube page, our Spotify page, 7071. So if you don't want any kind of Sloopcast gear, but you kind of like some oddball city, Ohio City like t-shirts, Jared's made a few made a few cool ones there.
That's just decent.
I do. I like oddballs.
Okay.
Again, thesloopcast.com, where you can find all of those links. We'll take a quick ad break and be right back.
I'm just saying, like I could take oddball as an insult. That's all I'm saying.
I'm more of a glass half empty kind of guy.
You mean full?
Empty. Either way.
Kyle, I adore you. You're one of my favorite people on the planet. You're terrible at metaphors. Now,
what else you got, Jared?
Excuse me. I believe this is the portion of the show where we ask what is in Kyle's corner.
A lot of things happened. A lot of things has happened since last we talked here, Jared.
Well, an entire spring game happened.
An entire spring game that we didn't even talk about happened too, but it was. I was out of
the country. I was out of the country
practice
last Sunday. We couldn't record, and I didn't want to show up an entire week after the spring game acting like the spring game had just happened. That felt like a silly thing to do, so we did this instead.
Ohio State lacrosse beat Michigan.
Hell yeah! Is it first ever
to win their first ever Big Ten title, like season title.
That's huge. I think lacrosse is such a cool sport, honestly.
It is. It's very physical type of sport. I know I don't want to go too much into here just because there's a lot of we can get really we can really get into a lot of conversations here, but Nico.
Oh boy.
Nico, the quarterback from Tennessee, transferring to UCLA. A lot of talks about NIL and what players believe that they are worth and what the market deems them worth here. There was just a lot of lot of bad, um, a lot of bad things going on between Nico and the Tennessee organization.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to take that. One, I don't think it's good for anyone to be airing shit publicly the way everyone was airing shit publicly. So that's take number one. I think everyone, to quote Bo Burnham, can anyone shut the fuck up about anything? Like, hey, you don't got to take everything to social media. Now, as far as Nico's concerned, you're worth what someone's willing to pay you.
I mean, how I take this, Jared.
What did UCLA end up paying him? Is that public yet? I don't think, is that even public yet? It's, you know what? Point is that that's what he's worth. You are worth what someone is willing to pay you. And like, young man, go out and get your money. Whatever someone's willing to pay you is what you are worth. Young man, go get your money. I 100%. Go get your money.
Well, I truly believe the reason he transferred to UCLA, what I believe, Jared, is because UCLA,
Ohio State.
UCLA does travel to Columbus on November 15th.
Over under broken helmets 1.5.
I'm going to say under, just because I think UCLA will be better prepared knowing that that there's a chance that multiple helmets could be cracked.
I do wonder if there's more to it than money.
Well, Nico claimed that it's because of the offensive scheme or something related to that.
I think reading between the lines, I don't think he likes how much they were running him.
Sure.
That's a guess on my part. I'm not saying that I'm
Tennessee. Can you blame Tennessee for how poor he was passing, especially in conference, especially in the playoff game?
And that brings me back to another thing. One, you're worth what someone's willing to pay you. I'll reiterate that. You are worth what someone is willing to pay you. However, in my opinion, he's not a $4 million quarterback.
No.
Well, now, whatever UCLA paid him. More power to the young man. Go get your money. Good job. You use your leverage to get as much money as you can. As your God-given right as an American to go get as much money as you can while you can make it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't pay him $4 million. But hey, someone did. Or at least, again, I don't know what UCLA is paying him.
Yeah. All right. And last thing I have on here, and we'll wrap things up. Just on a personal note, I'm gonna give a shout out to my hometown here. Player here, Reese Verhoff, who was a kicker at my high school and went to Marshall for 3 years as a kicker and has now transferred to Chapel Hill.
Oh, he even gets the picture?
To be a Tar Heel for his senior year. Reese Verhoff.
And no disrespect to Marshall, which fine university, you get a UNC degree. That's a little, that carries a little bit more weight. Mm-hmm. It's a good university, right? You get that UNC degree.
Yeah. Yep. That's it. That's all I got.
Awesome. That puts us at about an hour. So I think we can go ahead and wrap things up. What are you thinking, Kyle? Give me direction on music. Just give me any sort of direction. So that I just give me a word.
give you a word?
Give me something. I don't know. Or really
Cavaliers. Cavaliers won game one. Cavaliers won game one as we were just finishing up here.
Okay. I don't necessarily know what to do with the word Cavaliers.
But Cleveland. It's in Cleveland.
I can do something with the word Cleveland. How about that?
All right.
I can do something with the word Cleveland. Let's see. And hey, can maybe just, keep talking while
keep talking here.
Yeah. I tell you, no, well, let's, from Cleveland, Cloud Nothings, they're from Cleveland. So let's do the Cloud Nothings. And with all that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, support your local podcasters. Once again, these are the Cloud Nothings.